Chapter 5, The Tale of Despereaux by Kate D. Camillo. What Furlough Saw. The Princess P looked down at Despereaux. Remember, he had crept all the way over to the king's foot. He was so mesmerized by the music. The Princess P looked down at Despereaux, and she smiled at him. And while her father played another song, a song about the deep purple falling over sleepy garden walls, the princess reached out and touched the top of the mouse's little head. Despereaux stared up at her in wonder. The P, he decided, looked just like the picture of the fair maiden in the book in the library. The princess smiled at Despereaux again, and this time Despereaux smiled back. And then something incredible happened. The mouse fell in love with Princess P. Reader, you may ask the question. In fact, you really must ask the question. Is it ridiculous for a very small, sickly, big-eared mouse to fall in love with a beautiful human princess named P? And the answer is yes, of course. It's ridiculous. And love is ridiculous. But also, love is wonderful and powerful. And Despereaux's love for the Princess P would prove in time to be all of these things: powerful, wonderful, and ridiculous. "You're so sweet," said the princess to Despereaux. "You're so tiny." As Despereaux looked up at her adoringly, Furlough happened to scurry past the princess's room, moving his head left to right, right to left, back and forth. "Cripes," said Furlough. He stopped. He stared into the princess's room. His whiskers became as tight as bowstrings. What Furlough saw was Despereaux Tilling sitting at the foot of the king. What Furlough saw was the princess touching the top of his brother's head. "Cripes," shouted Furlough. "Cripes, he's nuts. He's a goner." And executing a classic scurry, Furlough went off to tell his father, Lester Tilling, the terrible, unbelievable news of what he had just seen. And I think we'll go straight to chapter 6. It's called This Drum. He simply cannot be my son," Lester said. He clutched his whiskers with his front paws and shook his head from side to side in despair. "Of course he is your son," said Antoinette. "What do you mean? This is a ridiculous statement. Why must you always make the ridiculous statements?" "You," said Lester. "This is your fault. The French blood in him has just made him crazy." "C'est moi," said Antoinette. "C'est moi. Why must it always be I who takes the blame? If your son is such the disappointment, it is as much your fault as mine." "Something must be done," said Lester. He pulled on a whisker so hard that it came loose. He waved the whisker over his head and he pointed it at his wife. "He will be the end of us all, sitting at the foot of a human king. Unbelievable, unthinkable." "Oh, so dramatic," said Antoinette. Which is funny because I feel like she's pretty dramatic. She held out one paw and studied her painted nails. "He is a small mouse. How much of harm can he do?" "If there is one thing I've learned in the world," said Lester, "it is that mice must act like mice, or else there is bound to be trouble. I must call a special meeting of the Mouse Council. Together we will decide what must be done." "Oh," said Antoinette, "you in this council of the mouse. It is a waste of the time, in my opinion. Don't you understand? He must be punished. He must be brought up before the tribunal." He pushed past her and dug furiously through a pile of paper scraps until he uncovered a thimble with a piece of leather stretched across its open end. "Oh, please," said Antoinette, and she covered her ears. "Not this drum of the Council of the Mouse?" "Yes," said Lester, "the drum." He held it up high above his head, first to the north, and then to the south, and then to the east and the west. He lowered it and turned his back to his wife. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to beat the drum slowly, one long beat with his tail, and then two staccato beats with his paws. Boom, tot, tot, boom, tot, tot, boom, tot, tot. The rhythm of the drum was a signal for the members of the Mouse Council. Boom, tut, tut, boom, tut, tut, boom. The beating of the drum let them know that an important decision would have to be made, one that affected the safety and well-being of the entire mouse community. Boom, tut, tut, boom, tut, tut, boom. And that leads to chapter 7. We will pick up there next time. Chapter 7 is called A Mouse in Love.